Thank you for the like. Whoever that is. Thank you. Hot. So, we will be reading the next chapters of Kings. Hey Mercy, thank you for coming through. How are you? Yeah, we'll be reading the next. Hey Nick, thank you for coming through. Yeah, we will be reading the next chapters of Kings, which is chapters 5 to 10. And I'll just do a recap of what we read, and then I will do a then I will go on to the readings of what we read. So we read chapters Kings 1 to 4 yesterday. So I'll just do a welcome. So welcome those who are coming. I do this because I just want to encourage people to get into their Bible, start to build a relationship with God. And I myself am on this journey this year just to really get deep into the Bible, start to set my foundation solid with Christ, and just to really share my testimony of how much God has changed my life. It's really all to the glory of Him, and hopefully someone will come back to the kingdom. It's just ready to show how awesome God is. But I think all day, right? All day I've just been in the Word, which is like amazing. Can you just like, I've just been in the Word all day, right? From the morning, being in Revelations, and then I was on another channel who, his name's called Bruce. He does Bible studies every day, so I was in Revelations and was just really going into the deep diving into chapters 6 to 12, I think we went to, which is amazing. And now I'm here in Kings. So literally I've just been like with the Lord all day. I mean, I'm with the Lord every day, but I'm really in like deep like understanding. Hey Frankie Frog, thank you for coming through. So I'll do a recap of what we read, which is chapters 1 to 4 yesterday. It was yesterday, right? 1 to 4 yesterday. So we saw Adonijah tries to take power and become king. And as I was thinking, as we were reading through Samuel's, right? Poor David, like he really didn't get no rest from his enemies, you know. It was like one thing after another, and there's always someone trying to come for his throne. There was always someone trying to, you know, do something to make him not be king, right? And as we see throughout Samuel's, God had protected David all through that, even when he sinned, because he was quick to repent, right? He was very quick to repent. He was very quick to change his way. He was very quick to ask for forgiveness, right? He didn't leave it like a year. He didn't think, oh, I didn't need to repent, right? He didn't think that at all. Right? David was always in the deep. I just said, when does he get a break? Even up to his last days, they're still trying to take his throne, and it's his family as well. So I'm just like, you know, he finally did get rest, but you know, throughout that time, God had been testing him all that time, through his struggles and through his suffering, but he still kept faithful. He still endured for it, he still honored and respected God no matter what, right? And he always put faith in that God's plan was the right plan, right? If his will wants me to do this, then I'll do it, right? So we saw his son trying to take power and become king. And then we see David's death, and we now see Solomon becoming the new king as God has promised, right? So this is David instructing Solomon to keep God's commands and commands and judgment on those who are good, who were good to David and who was bad to David. So um, we see in some instances before David goes with his ancestors, he's saying to the Gideonites, is it the Gideonites? Look after them, and then he's saying to the um, he's saying to Shimei, you know, he has to go, basically. He has to go. So we see David giving him commands as well. And he's also really telling Solomon's his son with Bathsheba, who he committed adultery with, right? He's also telling his son to use his wisdom wisely. Use his wisdom wisely. And then we see Solomon ask God for wisdom, right? Which is amazing, because you know Solomon didn't ask for materialistic things when he prayed to God and asked him for something, right? He didn't ask for anything temporary, right? But he asked for something everlasting. He asked for something that was more valuable than anything, and he asked for wisdom, right? And he didn't ask for wisdom for his own personal gain, for his own self. He asked for wisdom to be able to make the ability to make sound judgment, right? To make decisions correctly, right? To be fair, to have justice to those, right? And what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to make sound judgment and decisions by applying knowledge, experience, understanding, and insight. And those are all the things God is, right? So can you imagine God passing down his wisdom onto Solomon, right? And no one was wiser than him, right? No one was ever wiser than him, because God said that there'll be no one like him. So that's what telling you there. Also, right, in contrast, we start to see that Solomon is breaking some of God's rules, right? And we start to see where he's marrying Pharaoh's daughter, right? And God said not to marry any foreigners. That's not an Israelite, because you will start to follow their teachings and their worship, right? And we see that as we go out through Kings. The themes that were in the last chapter were humility. So we see Solomon asked for wisdom to be able to judge righteously. So God gifted him with wisdom and discernment, and then God gifted him more. God keeps his promise, so making Solomon king. He promised David that one of his own will rise up. And then the house of Eli, priesthood, is no longer. So Abiathar was that was the end of the priesthood line for Eli, which was in Samuel's. And why? Because Abiathar was on Adonijah's side, but when he wanted to rule over king. So that was the end of Abiathar, but that had already been said in Samuel's. God already said that to Eli, that your line will be no more, and God kept his promise. So God, when he says yes, he says yes. When he says no, he says no. He's not in between, right? He's not in between. So we'll get into chapters. So in 1 Kings chapter 5. So we're doing 5 to 10. So chapter 5. When Hiram, king of Tyre, heard that Solomon had been anointed king to succeed his father David, he sent his envoys to Solomon because he had always been on friendly terms with David. Solomon sent back this message to Hiram. You know that because of the wars waged against my father David from all sides, he could not build a temple for the name of the Lord his God until the Lord put his enemies under his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, and there is no adversary or disaster. I intend therefore to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord told my father David when he said, your son whom I will put on the throne in your place will build the temple for my name. So give orders that cedars of Lebanon be cut for me. My men will work with yours, and I will pay you for your men whatever wages you set. You know that we have no one so skilled in felling timber as the Sidonians. When Hiram heard Solomon's message, he was greatly pleased and said, praise be to the Lord today, for he has given David a wise son to rule over his great nation. So Hiram sent word to Solomon, I have received the message you sent me and will do all you want in providing the cedar and juniper logs. My men will haul them down from Lebanon to the Mediterranean Sea, and I will float them as rafts by sea to the place you specify. There I will separate them, and you can take them away. Then you are to grant my wish by providing food for my royal household. In this way, Hiram kept Solomon supplied with all the cedars and juniper logs he wanted. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cors of wheat as food for his household, in addition to 20,000 baths of pressed olive oil. Solomon continued to do this for Hiram year after year. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom, just as he had promised him. There were peaceful relations between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty. King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel, 30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shift of 10,000 a month, so that they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hill, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project and directed the workers. At the king's command, they removed from the quarry large blocks of high-grade stone to provide a foundation of dressing stone for the temple. The craftsmen of Solomon and Hiram and workers from Byblos cut and prepared the timber and stone for the building of the temple. In the 480th year after the Israelites came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide and 30 high. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. He made narrow windows high up in the temple walls. Against the walls of the main hall and inner sanctuary, he built a structure surrounding the building in which there was side rooms. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide. The middle floor was 6 cubits, and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. In the building, the temple only blocks dressed at the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. So the so the stones were all pre-made at Solomon's quarry. So it's like a underground I don't know, like cave, I guess, where they built the temple things, stones, I guess, where they put it all together and then start to carry it up to where the site is going to be built, right? So that's why you never heard them make the sound, and why they never used ham a hammer, chisel, or any other iron tools, because it was usually associated with war, right? And I guess that's usually associated with war. So I mean, it's meant to the temple is meant to be like the tabernacle is meant to be peaceful. It's meant to be holy. So putting the iron and the chisels in there, which represents war, right? Goes against what the temple means, which is God's dwelling place. I'd have to find in Exodus. There was I think it's Exodus. It did say that when building a temple, building something, that there shouldn't be no iron um, tools in there, as it does represent these kind of things. So the entrance to the lowest floor was on the south side of the temple. A stairway led up to the middle level and from there to the third. So he built the temple and completed it, roofing it with beams and cedar planks. And he built the side rooms all along the temple. The height of each was 5 cubits, and they were attached to the temple by beams of cedar. The word of the Lord came to Solomon, as for this temple you are building, if you follow my decrees, observe my laws, and keep all my commands and obey them, I will refill through you the promise I gave to David your father, and I will among the Israelites and will not abandon my people Israel. And I will live among the Israelites and will not abandon my people Israel. So Solomon built the temple and completed it. He lined its interior walls with cedar boards, from paneling them from the floor of the temple to the ceiling, and covered the floor of the temple with planks of juniper. He partitioned off 20 cubits at the rear of the temple with cedar boards from floor to ceiling, to form within the temple an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. The main hall in front of this room was 40 cubits long. The side of the temple was cedar, carved with gourds and open flowers. Everything was cedar, no stone was to be seen. He prepared the inner sanctuary within the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold, and he also overlaid the altar of cedar. The Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold, and he extended the gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold. He overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. For the inner sanctuary he made a pair of cherubim out of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. One wing of the first cherub was 5 cubits long, and the other wing was 5 cubits, 10 cubits from wing tip to wing tip. The second cherub was also measured 10 cubits, for the two cherubim were identical in size and shape. The height of each cherubim was 10 cubits. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherub touched one wall, while the wing of the other touched the other, and their wings touched together in the middle of the room. He overlaid the cherubim with gold. on the walls all around the temple, in both the inner and outer rooms. He carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He also covered the floors of both the inner and outer room of the temple with gold. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary, he made doors out of olive wood that were 1/5 of the width of the sanctuary, and on the two olive wood doors he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, and overlaid the cherubim and the palm trees with hammered gold. In the same way, for the entrance to the main hall, he made door frames out of olive wood that were 1/4 of the width of the hall. He also made two doors out of wood, which juniper wood, each giving two leaves that turned into sockets. He carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them, and overlaid them with gold hammered evenly over the carvings. And he built the inner courtyard of the 3 courses of dressed stone, and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams. The foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid in the 40th year, in the month of Ziv. In the 11th year, in the month of Bul, the 8th month, the temple was finished in all its details, according to its specifications. He had spent 7 years building it. 7 years. So you see how detailed it was, just like how detailed the tabernacle was in a lot more detail. But it's the same principle. The tabernacle, the temple was thought out. It was really made in the exact same way, you know. So it still was a place where God can dwell, right? So instead of it being a tent, it was an actual building, right? So that was where God was always going to be. So they didn't have to keep carrying him around whenever they needed his presence, and keep setting up the tabernacle, and keep taking down the tabernacle, and then keep carrying the stuff in the tabernacle. There was no need to do that, because there's a solid building there now. So it just goes on to show the same way the tabernacle was built. Chapter 7. It took Solomon 13 years, however, to complete the construction of his palace. He built the palace of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high, with 4 rows of cedar columns supporting trimmed cedar beams. It was roofed with cedar above the beams that rested on the columns, 45 beams, 15 to a row. Its windows were placed high in sets of 3, facing each other. All the doorways had rectangular frames. They were in the front part in sets of 3 facing each other. He made a colonnade 50 cubits long and 30 wide. In front of it was a portico, and in front of that were pillars and an overhanging roof. He built the throne hall, the hall of justice, where he was to judge, and he covered it with cedar from floor to ceiling, and the palace in which he was to live in, set further back, was similar in design. Solomon also made a palace like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. All these structures, from the outside to the great courtyard and from the foundations to eaves, were made of blocks of high-grade stone, to cut and smooth on their inner and outer faces. The foundations were laid with large stones of good quality, some measuring 10 cubits and some 8. Above were high-grade stones, cut 2 sides, and cedar beams. The great courtyard was surrounded by a wall of 3 courses of dressed stone, and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams, as was the inner courtyard of the temple of the Lord with its portico. King Solomon sent to Tyre and bought Huram, whose mother was a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and whose father was from Tyre, and a skilled craftsman in bronze. Huram was filled with wisdom, with understanding, and knowledge to do all things of bronze work. How was he? How was he filled with this knowledge? Because God gave him the gift of wisdom. I can't remember the exact verse in Proverbs, but the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, right? God gave this craftsman the wisdom and understanding to do all kinds of bronze work, right? We got to thank our God for giving us these gifts to use, and we should be using them for the good, right? We should be using them in for the greater. He came to King Solomon and did all the works assigned to him. He cast 2 bronze pillars, each 18 cubits high and 12 cubits in circumference. He also made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set on the tops of the pillar. Each capital was 5 cubits high. A network of interwoven chains adorned the capitals on top of the pillars, each 7 for each capital. He made pomegranates in 2 rows, encircling each network to decorate the capitals on top of the pillars. He did the same for each capital. The capitals on the top of the pillars in the portico were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits high. On the capitals of both pillars, both the bowl-shaped part next to the network, were the 200 pomegranates in rows all around. He erected the pillars at the portico of the temple. The pillar to the south he named Jachin, and the one to the north Boaz. The capitals on top were in the shape of lilies, and so the work on the pillars were completed. He made the sea of cast metal circular in shape, measuring 10 cubits from rim to rim and 5 cubits high. It took a line of 30 cubits to measure around it. Below the rim, gourds encircled it, 10 to a cubit. The gourds were cast in 2 rows in one piece with the sea. The sea stood on 12 balls, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and the 3 facing east. The sea rested on top of them, and their hind quarters were towards the center. It was a hand breadth in thickness, and its rim was like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. He also made a 10 movable stand of bronze. Each was 4 cubit long, 4 cubit wide, and 3 high. This is how the stands were made. They had side panels attached to uprights. On the panels between the uprights were lion, bulls, and cherubim, and on the upright as well. Above and below the lions and bulls were wreaths of hammered work. Each stand had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles, and each had a basin rested on 4 supports, each cast with wreaths on each side. On the inside of the stand there was an opening that had a circular frame, 1 cubit deep. The opening was round, and with its basework it measured 1.5 cubits. Round its opening there was engraving. The panel of the stands were square, not round. The 4 wheels were under the panel, and the axles of the wheels were attached to the stand. The diameter of each wheel was 1.5 cubits. The wheels were made like chariot wheels. The axles, rims, spoke, and hubs were all of cast metal. Each stand had 4 handles, 1 on each corner, projecting from the stand. At the top of the stand, there was a circular band 0.5 cubit deep. The supports and panels were attached to the top of the stand. He engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees on the surface of their supports, and on the panel in every available space, with reefs all around. This is the way he made the 10 stands. They were all cast in the same mold and were identical in size and shape. He then made a 10 bronze basin, each holding 40 baths and measuring 4 cubits across, one basin to go on each of the 10 stands. He placed 5 of the stands on the south side of the temple and 5 on the north. He placed the sea on the south side at the southeast corner of the temple. He also made the pots and the shovels and the sprinkling bowls. So Hiram finished all the work he had undertaken for King Solomon in the temple of the Lord. Hey, Bruce. I'm in First Kings. Oh, thank you, Messi. I'm in First Kings chapter 7, verse 41. The two pillars in the temple of the Lord, the 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 2 sets of network decorating the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 sets of network, 2 rows of pomegranate for each network decorating the bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars. The 10 stands with their 10 basins, the sea and the 12 balls under it, the pots, shovels and sprinkling bowls. All these subjects that Hiram made for King Solomon for the temple of the Lord were of burnished bronze. The king had them cast in clay molds in the plain of the Jordan between Succoth and Zathan. Solomon left all these things unweighed because there were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Solomon also made all the furnishings that were in the Lord's temple, the golden altar, the golden table on which the bread of the presence, the lampstand of pure gold, 5 on the right and 5 on the left in the front of the inner sanctuary, and the gold floor work and lamps and tongs, the pure gold dishes, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, dishes and censers, and the gold sockets for the doors of the innermost room, the most holy place, and also for the doors of the main hall of the temple. When all the work King Solomon had done for the temple of the Lord was finished, he brought in the things his father David had dedicated, the silver and gold and the furnishing, and he placed them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. It says David dedicated, so we know that David at this time has gone, right? So David must have been saving up his silver and gold and saving up whatever he had, right? In the hopes of that one day that this temple is going to be built, to, I guess, help with the temple. But we can see how dedicated David was to God, you know, that he's willing to set his treasures aside, that God has blessed him to help with the temple. God made Solomon the richest man on the planet because he wasn't selfish. He wanted the wisdom to lead God's people effectively. Yes, David paid for the temple, but God wouldn't let him, so he left it for Solomon. Exactly. That's just so amazing. Even after David is no longer king and he's gone with his ancestors, right? He still did a selfless act. He still did something for the Lord, you know, even after he was gone, right? And King David will be remembered for that. It's like when you leave this earth, like, what do you want to be remembered for? Chapter 8. Then King Solomon summoned into the presence at Jerusalem the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes and the chiefs of the Israelite families, to bring up the ark of the Lord's covenant from Zion, the city of David. All the Israelites came together to King Solomon at the time of the festival in the month of Ethan, the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel had arrived, the priests took up the ark, and they brought up the ark of the Lord and the tent of meeting. And all the tent of meeting is the tabernacle. The tent of meeting is the tabernacle. So they've taken out everything out of the tabernacle to put in this building where the Lord would dwell. Right, the tent of meeting and all the sacred furnishings in it. The priests and the Levites carried them up. Bought a threshing floor. That threshing floor is the same place that Abraham was to sacrifice Isaac. Is also where Jesus was crucified. Mount Moriah. Thank you for that, Bruce. I read a little bit about that. I thought that was amazing when I heard that. You see how God makes the mistakes. You see how God made it. It's like he just fits all the puzzles together, you know. And he gives us if you ask him properly, right, he gives us the wisdom to understand what he's doing, right? The priests and the Levites carried them up, and King Solomon and the entire assembly of Israel that had gathered about him were before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and cattle that they could not be recorded or counted. The priests then brought the ark of the Lord's covenant to its place in the inner sanctuary of the temple, the most holy place, and put it beneath the wings of the cherubim, right? So the wings of the cherubim. Why is it underneath the cherubim? Because the cherubim was protecting Eden, wasn't it? It was protecting the Garden of Eden before Adam and Eve got kicked out, you know. I think it said when they kicked out, the cherubims were like standing at the entrance saying, you know, Adam and Eve can't get back in, right? But the cherubim is meant to be like the highest angel. I think it's meant to be the highest, one of the most highest, powerful, and it's meant to protect God. So it's understandable why the ark, that the Lord of the Covenant ark, is underneath there, because remember, it's got the commandments, Aaron's staff, and the manna in it. So, you know, it's put underneath the cherubim for protection, right? Exactly, Bruce. Yes, they were standing at the entrance, and a flaming sword went each way to keep them out of. Exactly. The priest then brought the ark of the Lord. The cherubim spread their wings over the place of the ark and overshadowed the ark and its carrying poles. These poles were so long that their ends could be seen from the holy place in the front of the inner sanctuary, but not from the outside the holy place, and they were still there today. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 stone tablets that Moses had placed in it at Horeb. It's Horeb. I don't want to get it wrong. It's Horeb Mount Sinai. It's Horeb Mount Sinai. Someone help me. Where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. When the priests withdrew from the holy place, the cloud filled the temple of the Lord, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled his temple. See, that's how powerful God is, right? His glory is that powerful that they couldn't do anything while he was there, right? Then Solomon said, the Lord has said that he will dwell in a dark cloud. I have indeed built a magnificent temple for you, a place for you to dwell forever. While the whole assembly of Israel was standing there, the king turned around and blessed them. Then he said, praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who with his own hand has fulfilled what he promised with his mouth to my father David. For he said, since the day I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have not chosen a city in any tribe of Israel to have a temple built, so that my name might be there. But I have chosen David to rule my people Israel. You see that? Thank you, Mercy. You see that? He has chosen David to rule my people Israel. My father David had it in his heart to build a temple for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to my father David, you did well to have it in your heart to build a temple for my name. Nevertheless, you are not the one to build the temple, but your son, your own flesh and blood. He is the one who will build the temple for my name. The Lord has kept the promise he made. I have succeeded David my father, and now I sit on the throne of Israel, just as the Lord promised. And I have built the temple for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. I have provided a place there for the ark, in which the covenant of the Lord that he made with our ancestors when he brought them out of Egypt. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in front of the whole assembly of Israel, spread out his hands towards heaven and said, Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below, you who keep your covenant of love with your servants, who continue wholeheartedly in your way. You have kept your promise to your servant David, my father. With your mouth you have promised, and with your hand you have fulfilled it as it is today. Now the Lord, the God of Israel, keep for your servant David, my father, the promise you made to him when you said, you shall never fail to have a successor to sit before me on the throne of Israel. If only your descendants are careful in all they do to walk before me faithfully as you have done. And now, God of Israel, let your word that you promised your servant David, my father, come true. But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, the highest heavens, cannot contain you. All right? So, God is not limited to where he can dwell, right? So not even the heavens can contain him. Not even the highest heavens could contain him. Not even the highest earth where was I? Not even the highest heavens can contain him, right? You know, and Solomon's asking, is God really gonna dwell here? Like, is he really just gonna dwell in one place? Like, God's a big God. Like, you can't limit him to anywhere, right? You can't just box him here and say stay here. How much less this temple I built? Yet give attention to your servant prayer and plead for mercy, Lord. My God, hear the cry and the prayer that your servant is praying in your presence this day. May your eyes be open towards the temple night and day, this place of which you said, my name shall be there, so that you will never hear the prayer your servant prays towards this place. Hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel when they pray towards this place. Hear from heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. When anyone wrongs their neighbor and is required to take an oath, and they come and swear the oath before your altar in this temple, then hear from heaven and act. Judge between your servants, condemning the guilty by bringing them down on their heads what they have done, and vindicating the innocent by treating them in accordance with their innocence. When your people Israel have been defeated by an enemy because they have sinned against you, and when they turn back to you and have praised to your name, praying and making supplication to you in this temple, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your people Israel and bring them back to the land you gave to their ancestors. When the heavens are shut up and there is no rain because your people have sinned against you, and when they pray towards this place and give praise to your name and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin for your servant, your people Israel. Teach them the right way to live and send rain on the land you gave your people for an inheritance. When famine or plague comes to the land, or blight or mildew, locusts or grasshoppers, or when an enemy besieges them in any of their cities, whatever disaster or disease may come, and when a prayer or plea is made by anyone among your people Israel, being aware of the afflictions of their own hearts, and spreading out their hands towards this temple, then hear from heaven, your dwelling place. Forgive and act, deal with everyone according to all they do, since you know their hearts, for you alone know every human heart, so that they will fear you all the time they live in the land you give your ancestors. Right, Bruce? Right. Um, and I just want to say to fear the Lord, right? Because to fear the Lord is not to fear his punishment, right? Okay, yeah, we should fear it a little bit, right? His wrath. But to fear the Lord is also to be in awe of him, to respect him, to want to be obedient to him, right? Because you know he's the creator, right? That when you get to that level and you're just like in such like you, God is so powerful, right? And he's so all-knowing, right? You just want to learn more and more and more, because you're just such in awe of like how he put all of this together and how he meticulously thought things through. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. As for the foreigners who does not belong to your people Israel, but has come from a distant land because of your name, for they will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm when they come and pray towards this temple. Then hear from heaven, your dwelling place. Do whatever the foreigner asks of you, so that all the people of the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your own people Israel, and may know that this house I have built bears your name. When your people go to war against their enemies, whenever you send them, and when they pray to the Lord towards the city you have chosen and the temple I have built for your name, then hear from heaven their prayers and their plea and uphold their cause. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin. Do you hear that? There is no one that does not sin. God knows that we humans are not able to walk 100% righteously, right? So even when Solomon is saying to God, even when we sin against you, because he knows that we are not perfect, right? Still have a little bit of mercy on us, right? And you become angry with them and give them over to the enemies who take them captive to their own lands far away or near. And if they have a change of heart in the land where they have held captive, if they have repented, guys, if they have repented, right? If you have repented for what you have done and sincerely repented, right? You're remorseful for what you've done, right? You want to turn away from sin and you really want to walk righteously. You really want to come back to God and you really want to come back to the kingdom, right? And repented and plead with you in the land of their captors and say, we have sinned, we have done wrong, we have acted wickedly. And if they turn back to you with all their hearts and soul in the land of their enemies who took them captive, and pray to you towards the land you gave their ancestors, towards the city you have chosen and the temple I have built for your name, then from heaven, your dwelling place, hear their prayer and plea and uphold their cause. And forgive your people who have sinned against you. Forgive all their offenses they have committed against you, and cause their captors to show them mercy. For they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out of Egypt, out of that iron smelting furnace. May your eyes be open to your servant's plea and to the plea of your people Israel, and may you listen to them whenever they cry out to you, for you singled them out from all the nations of the world to be your own inheritance, just as you declared through your servant Moses when you, sovereign Lord, brought out our ancestors out of Egypt. When Solomon had finished all these prayers and supplications to the Lord, he rose from before the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling with his hand spread out towards heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel in a loud voice, saying, Praise be to the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Right? Remember, David did not have no rest from his enemy, and now they have finally got rest. God promised that they would get rest. No one word has failed of all the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in obedience to him, and keep the commands, decrees, and laws he gave our ancestors. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he may uphold the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel according to each day needed, so that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and that there is no other. And may your hearts be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands as at this time. Then the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifices before the Lord. Solomon offered a sacrifice of fellowship offerings to the Lord, 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. So the king and all the Israelites dedicated the temple of the Lord. On the same day, the king consecrated the middle part of the courtyard in front of the temple of the Lord, and there he offered the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and the fat of the fellowship offerings, because the bronze altar that stood before the Lord was too small to hold the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the fat of the fellowship offerings. So Solomon observed the festival at that time, and all Israel with him, a vast assembly, people from Lebo Hamath to the Wadi of Egypt. They celebrated it before the Lord our God for 7 days, and 7 days more, 14 days in all. On the following day, he sent the people away. They blessed the king and then went home, joyful and glad in heart for all the good things the Lord had done for his servant David and his people Israel. Amen, Bruce. Thank you for coming in, Bruce. Thank you. Chapter 9. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace and had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time. As he appeared to him at Gibeon, the Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there, As for you, if you walk before me faithfully with integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. But if you or your descendants turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them and will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. Israel will then become a byword and object of ridicule among all peoples. This temple will become a heap of rubble. All who pass by will be appalled and will scoff and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple? People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their ancestors out of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, worshipping and serving them. That is why the Lord brought all this disaster on them. At the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built these two buildings, the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedar and juniper and gold he wanted. But when Hiram went from Tyre to see the towns that Solomon had given him, he was not pleased with them. What kind of towns are these you have given me, my brother? He asked. And he called them the land of Kabul, a name they have to this day. Now Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazar, Midigo, and Giza. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had attacked and captured Giza. He had set it on fire. He killed its Canaanite inhabitants and then gave it a wedding gift to its daughter, Solomon's wife. And Solomon rebuilt Giza. He built up Lower Beth Horon, Baalath, and Tadmor in the desert within his land, as well as all his store cities and the towns for his chariots and for his horses. Whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and throughout all the territory he ruled. There were still people left from the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These people were not Israelites. Solomon conscripted the descendants of all these people remaining in the land, whom the Israelites could not exterminate, to serve as slave labor, as it is to this day. But Solomon did not make slaves of any of the Israelites. They were his fighting men, his government officials, his officers, his captains, and the commanders of his chariots and charioteers. They were also the chiefs official in charge of Solomon's projects, 550 officials supervising those who did the work. After Pharaoh's daughter had come up from the city of David to the palace Solomon had built for her, he constructed the terraces. 3 times a year, Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar he had built for the Lord, burning incense before the Lord along with them, and so fulfilled the people's obligations. King Solomon also built ships at Ezion Geber, which is near Elath in Edom, on the shore of the Red Sea. And Hiram sent his men sailors who knew the sea to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed to Ophir and brought back 420 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. Chapter 10. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relationship to the Lord, she came to test Solomon with hard questions, arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan, with camels, carrying spices, large quantity of gold and precious stones. She came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attendant servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your people must be, how happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spice and precious stone. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Hiram bought ships Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and from there they brought great cargoes of almug wood and precious stones. The king used the almug wood to make support for the temples of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. So much almug wood has never been imported or seen since that day. King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned with her reaching to her own country. I think Solomon has a weak spot. This is Solomon's problem. Solomon's problem is the women, right? He just can't help himself. He just has a really sweet spot for women, right? And he just can't help himself, right? Sheba was a big dog, of course. He just can't help himself. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues from merchants and traders and from all the Arabian kings and the governments of the territories. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went in each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold and the 3 minas of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Then the king made a great throne covered with ivory and overlaid the fine gold. The throne had 6 steps and its back had a round top. On both sides of the seat were armrests with a lion standing beside each of them. 12 lions stood on the 6th step, one at either end of each step. Nothing like it had ever been made for any other kingdom. All King Solomon goblets were gold, and all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver, because silver was considered of little value in Solomon's days. The king had a fleet of trading ships at sea, along with the ships of Hiram. Once every 3 years it returned carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. The whole earth sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, robes, weapons and spices, and horses and mules. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities, and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and Kure. The royal merchants purchased them from Kure at their current price. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. They also imported them all to the king of the Hittites and of the Armenians. Hi, Jules. You know, even though King Solomon is like really going against everything God is telling him not to do, right? God's still showing him some sort of mercy because so King Solomon is really pushing it. He's really pushing it. I just want to read you Deuteronomy 17. Let's go to Deuteronomy. So we're in Deuteronomy chapter 7, right? And if we go to the king, it tells you here what the kings can do and what the kings can't do. And King Solomon is really just, I don't know, man. It says here, Deuteronomy chapter 17, we're going to go from 14. Should we do all of that? 14 to 20. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, and you have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, let us set a king over us, like all the nations around us, be sure to appoint over you a king the Lord your God chooses. He must be from among your fellow Israelites. Do not place a foreigner over you, one who is not an Israelite. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself or make the people return to Egypt. And what has he done? Returned to Egypt to get more of them. For the Lord has told you, you are not to go back that way again. He must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. He must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. When he takes the throne of his kingdom, he is to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law, taken from that of the Levitical priests. It is to be with him, and he is to read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God. Revere, right? To respect God. He must learn how to respect the Lord his God and follow carefully all the words of his law and these degrees, and not consider himself better than his fellow Israelites and turn from the Lord to the right or to the left. Then he and his descendants will reign a long time over his kingdom in Israel. And as we can see, King Solomon, he's just kind of broken all of them. It just goes to show how merciful God is, really, that he didn't do anything to King Solomon, but he also recognized that King David was very faithful to him, right? And he still kept his promise to King David. Yeah. Exactly, it's the nature of having a human king, right? And that's why he said he doesn't want you to have chariots and horses. He doesn't want you to rely on man to fight your battles, right? He wants you to rely on him to fight your battles. That's why he doesn't want you to acquire these horses and these chariots for yourself, right? And he doesn't want you to go back into Egypt, the place where he took his people out, and now you want to go back. Like, what are we doing here? So yeah. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you for all that came through. I appreciate it. Thank you for those who gave a like. Thank you for those who put in the chat some information that I didn't know. I appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow to do a devotional, and then we'll be back in Kings again next week. Maybe never go back. Exactly. Love you too, Mercy. Thank you for your input. Thank you for coming through. Thank you for your input. I learned. Praise God. Exactly. Praise God. We're always learning, and he's always giving us something new. Every time we read the Bible, he's always giving us something new. So we have to give him all the praises, and we have to give him all the thanks for that, because it's his wisdom, it's his strength, right? It's his knowledge, it's his understanding that's helping. So I will see you tomorrow. If not, I'll see you next week. Bye.